14,000 players signed up to the largest event ever to take place within Elite Dangerous. It was Distant Worlds 2, and it was easily mine, and amongst many other people's favourite experience ever in a video game. Well, it should come as good news then to many of you that we are now on the verge of a very real possibility of Distant Worlds 3. This information comes in the form of a forum post posted by Eramus, who was the lead organiser for Distant Worlds 1 and 2. So straight up front, it's not guaranteed by any means that we are going to get a Distant Worlds 3, but it's looking increasingly likely. At the moment, the organisers are trying to gauge interest. To the community as it stands today in 2025, do they have interest in such an expedition? Because, well, years ago, this was very much of interest to a significant number of people. Now, for those of you who are new and missed the original events, what is Distant Worlds all about? Well, Distant Worlds 1 took place in January 2016, 9 years ago at this point, and Distant Worlds 2 followed up a little bit later in January of 2019. The first event managed to get 1,300 players sign up and take part, whereas the second event had 14,000 players signed up and actively taken part in the exploration expedition. Both of these involved players travelling en masse to the other side of the galaxy and many other destinations along the way. Not only were these significant events, but also key moments in Elite Dangerous history. For example, Explorer's Anchorage, the outpost at the centre of the galaxy at the galactic core there, actually came about as a result of this event. So yeah, for anyone who was involved at the time, a third expedition is very big news indeed. The bigger question perhaps though is whether or not the community of today, the Elite Dangerous player base as it stands right now, are they actually interested in an event like this? Because Elite is a very different game today compared to it was back in 2016 and even 2019. Back in those years, there was a significant number of player-organised events. These included things such as the Dangerous Games, the birth of Cloner itself, that second bubble out there in space, the Apollo expeditions, the Premonition event, the Gnosis incident, of course, the infamous one there, and not to mention the two Distant Worlds events themselves, and many others. In fact, 2015, 2014, up to around about 2019 was an amazing time for Elite, really impressive. Hardly a week would go by without some player-focused news or some new player-run event. I remember it very well. I know a lot of other people do as well. The question is how many players currently from back then are still playing, and how many players today who weren't playing back then would be interested in taking part in an event of this scale, an event of this type. Now obviously exploration is a big thing of Elite Dangerous even today, but it has taken on a very different tone to what it had back in the early days. The galaxy then was big, I mean it's still big, but it was very hard to navigate across. Today we have ships that can jump many times what they were capable of back then, not to mention fleet carriers themselves, which on themselves can jump 500 light years and carrying an entire fleet of ships with them. And on top of that, we've also got the aspect that whilst still significantly less than 1% of the galaxy has currently been explored, back then we were in a time where still many things hadn't even been seen. It was still very easy to discover a new configuration, a new planet colour, a new nebula that no one had yet seen. Today, that is not really the case. And what that means, if there is to be a Distant Worlds 3, and the organisers definitely want to have one if possible, then it will need to take on a very different tone compared to the ones we've had in the past. So with that in mind, the organisers have said they want to come up with ways in which they can either try and recapture what made aspects of those journeys such a special thing, but this time using existing and new mechanics and game assets, or possibly even design a route that offers something different. That is their exact wording from the forum post. Essentially, they're saying that they would like to build on what made Distant Worlds 2 popular. But also, we do have something a little bit different this time. Drew Wager, Elite Dangerous author of Elite Reclamation and Elite Premonition, has said that he's willing to write a narrative that would go alongside a Distant Worlds 3. So there's a lot to consider. As you're watching through this video, if you've made it to this point, do leave a note about your interest in the comment section below. Were you around for the original Distant Worlds, and would you be interested in partaking in a new one? And also, let us know if you weren't around for then, but would still be interested in getting involved. I'm also going to put up a YouTube poll to try and gauge some interest there as well. Ultimately then, this has come at an interesting time. There was potential for a Distant Worlds 3 4 years ago, but that was ultimately put to bed. It was put on a halt because, there was that Odyssey launch to contend with, wasn't there? And Odyssey didn't launch in a very good way, and it kind of put off a lot of people from Elite Dangerous, not to mention the potential possibility for a Distant Worlds 3 at that time. But Elite is in a different place now, as we've already said. Odyssey it's more stable than it was back then, and we've also got somewhat of a renaissance of player interest within the game. Player numbers are increasing, largely thanks to the work that Frontier have been doing over the previous year or so. They've been putting a lot of work into Elite, releasing new ships, releasing new updates, and just generally all round improving the game. So it does seem that now would be a very good time for a third expedition. Let's have fingers crossed for seeing this go ahead. Now, one thing we should point out here is that if it is to go ahead, it's not going to happen anytime soon. The original Distant Worlds expedition, or the second one actually, took around about 6 months to organise and 3 months to run. So this is a huge undertaking for the people who are organising. With that in mind, the event would likely begin in January of 2026. So a while to wait if it is to go ahead, but it's going to take that long to organise. Let me know your thoughts about all of this in the comments section below, because it's going to be very interesting to see. Thanks for watching this video all the way through. Do check out the other one on the screen right here. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.